What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287, also on LinkedIn, where you can find more content that I write. The website where everything is dsmsports.net, and of course, follow along, subscribe on whichever podcast platform is your favorite. What a great show for you guys today. I love going in this direction. My guest on the podcast is Nick Lawson. He is the co-founder and CEO of Squad, SQWAD. They work with tons of sports teams, particularly on engaging sponsor activations, gamifying a lot of things, turning things old school contests and prediction contests and various engagement activities like that and turning them digital so they deliver a ton more value for sponsors. I've known Nick for years, and before we get to the chat with Nick, you're going to hear a lot about how you really truly make something like that generate ROI for a partner. Sponsors work with teams for a reason. They have goals, and when they decide to invest in a sponsorship with a team, they are expected to report back, well, how did that investment go? Are we delivering against those goals that we had? What are the measurable things that we can say means this was a successful activation and why we should go back to them or expand in the future? And so it's so important. Social media and sponsorship really started working together several years ago now, but it was a little bit of a give and take early on, and now we really have a good understanding, a lot of collaboration, and you truly can develop and build and engineer these activations so they can deliver truly against the goals. You're going to hear Nick talk a little about, is their goal brand awareness? Well, then here's what you should do. Is their goal to generate leads? Really, here's a way to do that. How can you ensure that you are creating true value, that when they think back to all their sponsorships they invested in, all the partnerships, how they're spending their budget, that they go, that was so dang valuable, how can we not renew or go back again in the future? So when you're thinking about sponsor social, try to think about what are the goals that we're helping that partner accomplish, and how can we make sure that we engineer the right things to help them accomplish those goals? Because otherwise you're just going through the motions, and it's not going to deliver the value at the end of the day, when it comes time to decide if they're going to continue that sponsorship or do it again. It's a little bit of a preview, but just a really good conversation. You're going to want to take notes. This is such an important chat with Nick Lawson of Squad. Right back with today's guest, and I am so psyched to be talking to him. I've known him for several years. We're going back a little ways now, but so psyched to have on the podcast today, Nick Lawson. He is co-founder of Squad. And welcome to the podcast today, Nick.
Thanks, man. So excited to be on the podcast. Yeah, we were just chatting before we jumped on. It's amazing in the sports business how you keep relationships, throughout years and years. But I think it's in person. We haven't chatted maybe since 2016, 2017. But obviously kept engaged through social channels and all that. But no, excited to chat with you today and chat sports business, sponsorship in digital.
Yeah, there's very few people on this planet that I can geek out with the way that you and I can geek out, just like we were offline before we started recording. And so we're going to do some more of that today nice. With the record button on. But first, tell us about you, Nick. Tell us about your background, how you got started in the space and how you got started with Squad, and any tips for folks that want to try to do what you do.
Yeah, it's been a saga, as I'm sure anybody in the sports industry has, with getting started. I played college football. I've always been in sports. My grandpa was a sports writer, so really got me into that sports piece of it. My undergrad degree was in art, so I thought, hey, I'm going to be a graphic designer for a team, and make the posters, make all that. Got my first internship with the Salem Kaiser Volcanoes minor league baseball team. Got brought into a few sponsorship pieces there, and just said, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to get on the business side, simultaneously getting my MBA. So did 2 summers worth of internships for minor league teams. The other one was the Salem Sabres, which no longer is a team, but was kind of an upstart semi-pro basketball team in the city. For them, I did just purely sponsorship sales. I then moved up to Portland, Oregon, said, hey, I'm going to go get a job with the Blazers or the Timbers or the Winterhawks. The Hops weren't in town yet, but just got beat out by people who had much better resumes than myself. And that's kind of really what spawned our first company, which was Pick Six. It was a mobile app company for sports teams that fizzled out, but then eventually into Squad, starting really around 2018, just to help teams sell more sponsorship, given that digital inventory was lacking and hard to produce, and brands back then, but even today, can't get enough of ways to reach fans on their phones, but also kind of create those scalable one-on-one experiences. So that was the quick version of, honestly, I couldn't get a job with the big teams. Eventually created the product and kind of pushed from there to really get to a spot where we could sell to our first team. First team turned to second team to the third team, and that ball kind of got rolling from there.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying earlier, when you have a good product, the way the sports world works, people talk, people learn from each other. Hey, what are you doing? I saw this. How'd you do that? And the snowball can snowball can grow quickly. But I mean, just tell me about what that process is like. Like you made it sound so easy. Oh yeah, I went to Portland, couldn't get the job I wanted, so I started a business, and now here I am today. So what? First off, like, was there that day, that moment where you're like, okay, I see this in my head, I see this product that could fulfill a need that I see is out there, and then when you have the idea, what's next?
Yeah, we have a kind of a crazy, scrappy story. So I graduate, I'm doing interviews, I'm talking about how digital can be important on the sponsorship side and, earning leads and building audiences. And, a lot of teams are kind of agreeing that I interviewed with, but again, just kept not getting the job. Funny enough, that then turned into I emailed Kelly Robinette, who is no longer with the team, but he was the senior vice president of marketing for the Portland Winterhawks, the minor league team here in town, and just said, "Hey, I would love to just do an informational interview with you, just to chat. I have an idea on a product. Would love to just get your background." And in all honesty, my goal there was just to kind of just get a job, right? Just be like, "Oh, this is impressive." That informational meeting, kind of turned into, can you build something like this? If you can build something like this, I'll give you your contract. And I kind of did the big dog thing and said, well, let me get you a scope together. Let me get you what we would require, get you a pricing thing. Created that thing on Photoshop mockups, came back in, and next thing you know, we had a contract. At the time, I didn't code. Nobody who I knew coded. So my college roommate at the time, Lee, and my co-founder now, was working at Nike. He wanted to kind of get into the startup scene, was thinking about, getting into that piece of it. And I said, look, perfect time to join. The only problem is we need a coder. So you should quit your job and go to a coding boot camp for a month, learn to code, and then code this product. So, we had a third co-founder at the time. So Lee and him kind of worked together to build our first product, launched it, broke. I'll give the Winterhawks a ton of credit. They're still one of our closest clients. But yeah, it just was refining that. In that time period, I was selling. So I actually sold our second client while the first product was breaking. Wow. Didn't think they would close the deal. As soon as they did, they closed the deal. So as soon as the Winterhawks season ended, the Seattle Storm season started, and that was our second client. So again, a different journey there. And yeah, kind of to your point, it wasn't as easy as just like, oh, we had an idea. I mean, there was a lot of sleepless nights. There was a lot of, hey, this is breaking. There was a lot of, hey, I'm so sorry. We're going to get this right. But there also was just a lot of learning on, hey, what do fans really want? What do brands really want? And can we kind of create a product that's going to help that sports team, reach their goal?
Yeah, I think that's a key thing there too, is really honing in on delivering results that were trackable against goals, and something that the early days of social and digital or sponsorship activation didn't really do. I say activation with finger quotes, I guess, because it was, hey, we're going to slap a logo on this, and there's still a lot of that going on. And maybe that helps accomplish, brand awareness, but it's more of a soft metric. And so when you came in, like, I guess, what was the crux of, here's what we're trying to solve for, and then how did it manifest itself in the squad product, which just continues to evolve today, of course?
Yeah, I think the big thing is when we first came in, we just kind of said, like, look, we have digital inventory. Brands want digital. Just go tell them it's digital and they'll buy it. Mm-hmm. That worked to an extent, right? But I think the real shift we made was we started really diving into understanding brand marketing, right? Like, what are brands looking for? What do they currently spend on? And I think the bigger thing is, what is our competition out there in sports sponsorship, right? Um, if a brand spends on a Facebook ad, what do they get back? And let's compare that to what we give them back with our current offerings, right? So I think the bigger thing became we started building our product more brand centric because we understood that brands are the end customer, right?
Mhm.
While a cool trivia game on the scoreboard will get you the awareness, when they go back and huddle up and say, do we want to buy that again? Um, what are they going to be measuring it against, right? And we started learning very quickly it's Facebook ads, it's Instagram ads, Twitter ads. And we created kind of what we call a sponsorship funnel, or really the kind of levels. Within every brand marketing spend, the goal we started finding was to get through four levels. Awareness, which is kind of your given. Does the person see this, ad, right? Engagement. Does the person click on this ad? Does the person watch the video all the way through? Is there more of a buy-in, right? The third piece is obviously the call to action. Are we earning leads? Are we, sending out offers and discounts to make a purchase? But then I think the fourth one that a lot of people forget, especially in sponsorship, is the re-engagement. When you run a Facebook ad and you like earn that email, even if somebody doesn't make a purchase, you can create an audience that re-engages that person who maybe put something in their cart. We didn't have that in sponsorship, right? So what we started learning was if we really want to put teams in the best place to succeed, we have to start thinking, how can this product be better than them spending on Facebook ads? Because that's the default of where else they would go with their dollars. So we really started building that into our product from you see the scoreboard with trivia, today you scan the QR code and you play, right? That's your engagement. You're earning a lead, sending an offer, right? But then on the back side of it, are we helping you build audiences for that brand and also for your team so that when the car dealership reaches back out, they don't just say, hey, we have great terms on our cars. They're saying, thanks so much for playing trivia. By the way, here's 2 free tickets to the next game. Thanks to this car dealership, now you're building a relationship with them. So I think, that's the biggest shift that we found was just digital for digital's sake just doesn't work anymore, right? You can't just say, hey, we have digital options that can help reach customers. I think the most savvy brands, but even now, sort of that middle group of brands as well starts to understand like what's the ROI? Like if I'm spending $1 with you, what am I getting back? And I actually need to see that. And if I can't see that, the first thing I'm going to cut is going to be you, right? While it's fun to invest in sports sponsorship because you get to use the team logo. If the team does well, you can say, hey, we're a partner. That's great. But, when it comes down to, okay, I'm a CMO and I have to cut marketing spend, all of a sudden I'm to a point where I'm going to cut the thing where I don't know how much money it's bringing me back rather than cutting the thing that, tells me, and again, digital ads were really this case, tells me exactly how many people are reached, who they were, how much they spent, and then, put them into buckets to say, here's how you can re-engage them to drive a purchase.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely the last year plus, couple of years, and moving forward, people are going to expect to understand the performance of their marketing. Performance marketing is going to be the continued buzzword, and among other buzzwords, first party data and whatnot. And I think I went through these same sort of struggles working with properties and partners of, hey, like this is how we can truly measure the ROI of this activation, but we need you to play a little bit with us. We can't access your website data. We can't access your Facebook ad data. We don't know what happens to that audience if they, 3 months down the road, someone does buy a car or whatever it might be. So is there still like, are properties or partners more effectively partners more willing to play, or do they understand that, hey, we need to work together to really understand the true 360-degree value that's being provided here? Or is there still a little bit of, hey, if this is how we recommend you figure out the ROI of this activation, but at the end of the day, it's on them to make sure that they do so.
Yeah, I think we're going through a transition, and I always go back to like if you look at 1947 Ebbets Field, Brooklyn Dodgers, and just Google 1947 Ebbets Field scoreboard. You will see that they have scoreboard signs the same that we sell today, right? So I think the first part of that we sometimes struggle with properties is, look, you've been selling something for so long and haven't changed it, right? That it is sometimes a struggle to try something new, right? Um, from there, it becomes okay. Instead of doing a logo flash on your scoreboard, how do we replace that with a trivia that's going to be more engaging? I think the second part of that is really how much are these brands pushing back on you in these meetings, right? Because we have some teams that get a lot of pushback to say, I need ROI, right? And that's when we come in and we say, great, we have reports that can really help you with this toward activations and help earn leads and help send offers and all of that. So, a lot of the growth we've seen has been brands finally coming through and saying like, no, I need to like see these leads, right? And not just leads from throwing up a contest that says, enter all your information and you're entered to win a jersey, right? I think fans are too savvy for that nowadays to understand, okay, you're giving me this information to try to win a jersey. I know that you're going to re-engage me. So I know when I see that email from this car partner that they were, they got me, right? They got me in their system and now I'm going to send them to spam. You flip that with a trivia, right? Or a scratch them or a prediction game. Now all of a sudden it's a totally different thing. I'm entering my email to be able to win something, right? With an experience attached with it. So therefore, if I get that follow-up. So I think the second part of it is, are brands driving this? The most part we're seeing, yes. I think the struggle becomes sometimes brands don't bring this up in a recap meeting. Yeah. You give them the recap. They say, great, this is amazing. We really enjoyed our partnership. And then next thing you know, you don't hear from them. And then next thing you know, they don't renew. And you're kind of sitting there thinking like, hey, they were so excited about, this campaign with us. Why aren't they renewing? It's a bit of a shock. And I think the tough thing becomes, numbers don't lie. If you can give, whether it's through activations, whether it's through some other means, if you can give a brand a number, a singularity number that says, look, in 2 months, you were able to earn this many leads. If you wanted to run a campaign on Facebook to earn that many leads based on cost per lead, it would have cost you this much. Obviously, you didn't pay that much for this, entire package, not even just the activation, right? So now you're seeing a value. So I think the third part of it becomes sometimes we'll be chatting with, properties or, teams, and it's like, well, nobody's asking us for these numbers, right? And the tough thing becomes is just because they're not asking you for those numbers doesn't mean they're not going to make a decision based on you showed that this social tweet got X amount of views. If their North Star metric was earning leads, that means nothing to them. And again, going back to if you're not giving a reason why return on investment, a brand should come back with you, they're going to default to, okay, we're going to cut something. What's it going to be? Well, we don't really need social impressions anymore. That's kind of a vanity metric for us. So let's cut everything that has social metrics. If you have a thing that says, hey, we're earning 1,500, leads per month through this team, I can't turn off that pipeline. That's too important, right? That's too important for my organization. That's where it becomes. So I think for the most part, it's kind of, 3 parts. One is we're very old school in sponsorship. We haven't gone too far out of the realm for the last, almost 70 years. Now we're starting to have brands push us to get outside of the realm. But I think the third piece is sometimes brands push us to get out of the realm without telling us, and they just totally ghost us. And, if you're being ghosted by a partner right now, my follow-up email to them would just be, hey, look, maybe there wasn't a mesh up with the metrics. What's your North Star metric for this quarter or this year? Great. Okay, it's leads. Here's how I'm going to help solve that. And that's the easiest way to kind of rekindle that, because it means that you care about what they're trying to get accomplished.
Holy no! So much ringing true. We just bottle up that last couple minutes. You think about how they're presenting the ROI of their marketing spend or their budget spend to their supervisors, to their overseers, and you don't want whether the social media activation or whatever thing they're doing with Squad to be on like a separate row or a separate slide. We got this from this, but we know we're showing you that all these ads deliver these North Star metrics, but this got like you want to make sure that you're speaking the same language so that you can see that this is accomplishing what they set out to accomplish with this marketing budget or with this budget they allocated for this kind of activation. And
Yeah.
I think you mentioned earlier about how we think about, especially from a social media perspective, we had the awareness being the number one thing that social media could do for you early on, and it still is for some activations for some folks. And then engagement, and we're kind of at that phase now, I think, where engagement is giving way to, okay, engagements are nice, but we can't really pay the bills with likes. Our boss doesn't care if we how many engagements we generated if they're not leading to XYZ, which really means something to our bottom line business. And so, like, when you're thinking about, like, because I think from a perspective of, we still see, hey, predict who's going to score the first goal and just reply to this tweet or whatever it might be, and it's nice to get that engagement or the retweet to win sweepstakes at all. But are we at that point now where we are demanding more, where partners are demanding more, or we could be doing more? Like, how do you see that from Squad's perspective? And is that the crux of it? Is, hey, yeah, you can do this. You can get a bunch of comments in your Instagram post, but that's not doing much for the partner when it comes to what they really care about.
Yeah, whenever I see one of those tweets, I always think, the joke is for like Uber and Grubhub. It's like, hey, VCs basically are funding me getting this very cheap meal, right? Or this very cheap Uber ride because they're giving a discount. That those dollars, because they're maybe not profitable, are coming from somewhere. When I see social posts for like predict the first goal, the brand is basically paying to get you more engagement to increase the social media algorithm for you, right? As a team. Now, does that mean more awareness and more views? Of course. But again, if let's say I'm a bank and it's the first goal partner, right? As a bank, really, I'm trying to get people to sign up for my bank, right? There's building relationships, but to build a relationship and not earn leads is insane to me, right? Because I'm building a relationship with somebody that I can never come back to, or if they inbound to me, I have no idea who you are, right? Like, I don't have this in my database that you engaged with, this social media post, right? So it's, I think the biggest thing here is this, and this goes for brands too that sponsor these. In my mindset, if a team came to me and said, hey, let's do this like retweet to win, or let's do this like first goal prediction on social. If my North Star goal as a brand for the year or for the quarter was to increase awareness, right, or increase fans knowing about me, and that was it. That was my only goal. I didn't really care about anything else. I didn't care about sales. I didn't care about re-engagement. It was purely just, I want to be known. Then amazing. Spend dollars on that, right? It's going to work, right? People are going to see it every game consistently. They'll see the brand logo. Hopefully the team marketing hasn't made you make the logo tiny in the corner, which drives me crazy, right? Hopefully it's front and center of like brand experience. If that's your goal, then great. But I think again, when we go back to these sponsorship levels or these advertising levels, if you're offering an asset that only gets you to awareness and let's call it a little bit of engagement and it ends there, then again, a brand's going to go back and say like, well, what if we would have just target this team's fan with our own score predictor, had the team colors, but didn't have the team logo. And we had a thing that you had to, enter in information in order to make your prediction, right? If that gets me further down the funnel, right? If your team is not offering it, then there's other ways to be able to mimic this campaign. And I think that's the biggest piece here, which is you need to offer that full funnel. I talk about this a ton and probably ad nauseum. And people who listen to the content and the podcast are probably like, Nick, I've heard about the levels, but it's so important because I've seen deals fall apart because one piece of the funnel is not there, right? And again, the products for reaching consumers and getting them to purchase has innovated at a rapid pace. And if we don't keep up with that, if we continue to offer things that seem engaging but maybe aren't, right, toward that end goal, brands will stop paying for them at a high level. And again, we have brand of team, we have the sexiness of sports. Somebody will always pay a lot. But I think if you can add in more of that ROI piece, earning leads, so it's as easy as a tweak of like, for what we do at Squad for our activations when they're social, it's like, hey, want to make a prediction? Click here in order to play. The first thing is you ask for an email. Email, would you like to receive more information with a sponsor? Right now, our average is 68% opt in. So more than half the fans are going to opt into more sponsors. Let's play, make your pick, and you're good, right? That's not much more work than just posting a singular hey, just answer in the comments, but the value you're giving to the sponsors 10x 20x that. So I think that's what I struggle with. Again, it has its purpose if your brand is only trying to increase awareness, but if that's not their only goal, then you're missing a large piece that you could be by having those 1,500 people that commented, instead of having them comment, actually enter their email, make their prediction, be able to win a prize that they can use the next day, at a retailer to drive that sale.
Yeah, I think back to sort of what some of the obstacles are, what some of the reservations are, and part of it for me early on was understanding that, hey, these numbers might get increasingly smaller if we add these steps. Or like, hey, it's cool to say we had this many impressions of the Instagram post that had your logo in it. But if we add a contest to it, then it goes down. If we add a contest entry form, then it goes down. But at the end of the day, like especially let's say it's a real estate company that's paying $15K for a prediction contest or a trivia sweepstakes, and it's like, hey, if they sell one house from that, then they paid for their activation more times over than not. So if you're delivering, you can't be bashful about 200 leads, 500 leads, whatever it might be, as opposed to 2 million impressions. Because at the end of the day, if again, one conversion and they are set, they are tenfold over their investment or whatever it could be.
Yeah, so, and I think the big piece of that is you being able to prove, right? Like I used to sell restaurant ads in Portland, like literally a paper book that went in hotels. And this is just the other side of the equation where, a restaurant will come back to me and say, well, look, we didn't get anybody coming in from this ad. Why would I purchase it again? And I was trained basically to say, well, nobody's going to come in with the book and say, I saw this in the book. That's very rare. But you reached this many people. So somebody came in, right, and made a purchase. That didn't fly, right? I mean, we consistently lost partners because of that, restaurant partners because of that, compared to if we would have added a QR code onto that listing that scanned, and then you won an offer that had a very specific code from that book, you would have been able to say, yeah, we brought in 600 people, right? So I think that's the big piece of it is like, if you only do a social post, of course you can sell the messaging that somebody made a bank purchase, right? Or a car purchase or a real estate purchase, but can you prove it? No. If you can prove it, then that's almost guaranteed revenue coming back.
No, that's a great call out. A few minutes left here with Nick Lawson, co-founder of Squad. I can just pick his brain for so long on this stuff. So I do want to pick your brain a little bit now and thinking about sort of the fan psychology or the fan behavioral stuff that you think about when you're designing these activations for Squad or for Squad's customers, and whether it's the type of activation, the type of engagement, the type of game. I was reading an article today actually about how like in the late 70s there was a promotion for the team scored 6 goals, so everyone gets free chili at Wendy's, and I was thinking like, wow, they were doing that 40, 50 years ago. It's kind of cool to think that we're still doing that these days. And there's something to that, the aspect that this is what we find that fans want to do. And yes, we're adding in the data elements now so we can track that fan for, how much money they end up spending at Wendy's for the rest of their life, perhaps, from the activation. But just tell me, I guess, on the behavioral psychology part of it, what goes into selecting and designing the activations that you have. Give us an idea of what those activations are, and really how something's working or not.
Yeah, I think the first part of it is, obviously the activation should be fun. And familiar is kind of what we say, right? Like when we're thinking of a new activation, the first thing is like, is this fun? Would I actually have fun doing this, right? And that goes back to entering an email for a chance to win a jersey. Is that fun? No. Right. It's only fun for one person because only one person wins the jersey. Right. So, the fun factor is very low on that. And then again, familiar. If I see, I always go to this of like, somebody says, hey, there's a new card game, right, that I want to play with you. If they say it's like this game, then I'm much more obliged to play than if they just say it's a brand new one, I have to teach you all the rules. So, familiar is the second piece of it. Is it fun? Is it familiar? I think the third piece though is a lot of the psychological stuff we look at is getting you to actually play, right? We look at the marketing, we look at what it takes to actually get somebody to scan that code, what it takes to get somebody to enter that email, what it takes to get somebody to go to that store and actually make the redemption. And I think two things really stand out. The first thing is easy, and the second thing is consistency. So first part, are you making it as easy as possible for that fan to be able to play, right? If you're making it hard at any point, they're going to do the internal thing of saying, well, I could win a jersey, but this is a really hard onboarding process. I don't think it's worth it anymore. It's like what happens when I go to the grocery store and I only need one thing and I see the line. Usually my answer is like, I don't really need this one thing. It's not worth me standing in line for 20 minutes, right? Same thing your fans are doing when they see that QR code. So how are you making it as easy as possible? I think the second piece of it is consistency, and that's probably the biggest piece. Sometimes you'll launch an activation once, fans won't play it at the very first because it's not familiar, and then you say, well, only 10 fans played. This is a bust. I don't want to do this anymore, right? That's, consistency is the key piece. Imagine going to a game, seeing an activation for the first time. You're probably not going to play it. If you see it the second time, oh, wow, is this a thing that's done every game? Okay, you see the third time, yes, this is something that's done at every game. I want to engage with it now. So I think the key thing there is, again, it's those pieces of, hey, how easy is it to get a fan to play? And then the second piece of it is, are you giving it the consistency love? Are you actually saying, we're going to do this for 3 months or an entire season? I don't care if it gets low results. Obviously, in the first 2 months, if there's terrible results, make some tweaks, right? Add in the grand prize, add in motion to it, give it longer love or more shout outs on game day. But those are the two biggest pieces that we see. And again, it's not necessarily an activation thing. It's more of a, how do I convince a fan to take their time and enter their email to be able to play this activation? And again, easy and consistent are usually the two biggest pieces.
And is the enormous influx we're seeing now of gaming opportunities, and I use that term broadly intentionally, between gambling and non-gambling, or pathways to gambling once it becomes legal in the state, is that an opportunity for you guys, or is it competition? Like, hey, I can play this trivia game or this prediction game and maybe win some cool swag from the sponsor, from the team, but I can also put in a $50 bet and then just follow my own bet.
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity. I think what a lot of the gaming companies we've talked to, and lottery companies and actual physical casinos outside of sports betting, the biggest thing is they want to be attributed with winning, right? Like the excitement, that feeling you get when you win, right? So I think it's very much a, how can we get you used to that excitement feeling of winning, attach our brand to it, and then the next time you want to have that excitement piece to it, maybe you take it a step further. So it's almost like an introductory piece to it is what a lot we're seeing. And then again, as we talked about, earning that lead to then be able to engage you. Maybe the way a casino gets you from playing a prediction game every game to actually making a bet in their casino is by offering you tickets to a show that's coming up, right? That might be the way that they get you familiar and used to going in and making a visit and placing a bet, rather than just saying, hey, here's $10 in free play. $10 in free play is great, but at the same time, it's that entryway piece to help build that relationship. And then when you're ready to take that next step, obviously they're the first brand that you think of. And again, thinking of those trigger points or those trigger moments to say, how do I get you from playing this prediction game to actually coming into my casino or actually signing up for my sports betting platform from there?
Last one for you, Nick, for this shareable stat. This is just so much good stuff, man. And that is the kind of the chorus of what you've been talking about for years now. It's now really everyone's starting to talk about the idea of first party data. Yes, because Google's deprecating their cookies, of course, to keep on pushing the deadline back. Apple and their privacy settings. And now everyone realizes, hey, we should have been going after this all along and really having a direct relationship with our fans, with our customers. And so how has that become a bigger topic of conversation for the people that you work with, for your clients, for their partners, and really just, validating what you guys have been selling at Squad for years now?
Yeah, I think, first party data is becoming more and more valuable, as you talked about. Cookie apocalypse, Facebook not having as much, consumer data. So it really comes on brands to be able to say, hey, how do I build my audience so I don't have to rely on Facebook's knowledge because that audience might be going away. I think the bigger thing, though, is when we started, there was very little regulation around it, which was great for, I can just earn leads and not have to worry about compliance, but was bad for maybe society, right? As we kind of saw with earning, first party data and then exploiting it a little bit. So I think while the opportunity is still there, I think the biggest piece that you need to look at is just not saying we need to earn leads. Let's just earn leads. Really understanding, okay, what's coming down the pipeline compliance wise? Am I compliant with these leads? Because the worst thing that could happen is obviously you get, a government organization fining you for improperly collecting. Exactly. But the second worst thing that can happen is you get 15,000 leads in a segment. You're ready to hand them over to a sponsor, and the sponsor's like, well, did you collect these? Did they say yes to game rules? Did they opt in? Do you have a timestamp of when they opted in? Do you have age, right? And there's all these things that certain states are now starting to say, hey, if you're going to collect this, you need to have a lot of this proof of it. And again, nothing worse than like, hey, I have 15,000 leads, but I can't hand this to my sponsor, or they can't use them because it was not collected correctly. So I think the bigger thing as we look at the next couple of years is there's going to be operators that collect things non-compliantly, and there's going to be operators that collect it compliantly. And the ones that collect it compliantly, obviously, are going to be in the better position. So if you're really thinking, hey, I need to collect first-party data, it's not just putting it up a form. It's really understanding, based on state laws, based on federal law, what are some things coming down the pipeline and what's actually in the legal side of things to make sure I am compliant so that I can get this to my sponsor to be able to re-engage them.
It's really key insight as we look ahead to the present and the future. Nick, we can pick your brain for hours on this. We're going to start phone with you coming up in our Scratch Offs segment. First episode, Shareable Stat, coming up right now. Love being able to chat with Nick Lawson, co-founder and CEO of Squad. Could really pick his brain all day. I took a lot of notes. I hope you did too. Just tons of good information and insight, and really puts into words some powerful ideas that are only getting more powerful by the day, as we talked about toward the end there with first-party data and all that. We're going to have some more fun with Nick with our quick-hitting questions. But first, this episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat comes from a recent benchmark study by a software company called Rival IQ. They do an annual benchmark report where they look across industries and give you an idea of both post frequency as well as engagement rate. And of course, because this is a digital social media sports podcast, we're going to lean into the sports stats. And the one I'm going to share with you, among many, you can certainly look up, Rival IQ benchmark report and find all the great information. But I'm going to talk about the TikTok benchmark engagement rate. Think in your head, what do you think the average engagement rate is for sports teams on TikTok? You may work for a team, so you may have a better idea of what yours is. The average engagement rate per video on TikTok for sports teams was 9.18%. That is stunning, especially when you put it against the other three platforms that they listed, which are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The next closest was Instagram at 1.485%, compared to 9.18%. And it only goes down from there, with Facebook going next, and then Twitter bringing up the rear, which makes sense with the volume of tweets at 0.078%. So TikTok is obviously killing it when it comes to engagement. Now, it doesn't mean that every single post is viral. It means that the people that TikTok posts do reach generally want to engage with it. Almost 1 out of 10 users are going to take some kind of action and engage with that video, that see that video. That's often because TikTok's algorithm is good at making sure that the right content finds the right audience. But to think about that in terms of what you're trying to accomplish for your team or for your organization from a social media perspective. If it's just the big numbers and the big engagements, which oftentimes it is, then hell yeah, you're killing it on TikTok. But dig deeper. Look at who are you reaching on TikTok? How are you activating them? Are these the fans that you're trying to reach? Are these this is the audience that you're trying to reach compared to another platform? If it's a bunch of fans or a bunch of quote unquote random people all around the world, perhaps in other countries that they may not even know who your team is, that still is a lot of potential to turn that all that engagement into value, but it may not be aligned with your immediate goals, trying to put butts in seats or drive sponsor value or whatnot. So certainly a very thought-provoking stat. We're all killing it on TikTok. The numbers are big. The engagement rate, of course, is huge, as this episode's shareable stat will tell you. But definitely dig deeper. Whenever you see any numbers at all, think about, ask why 3 or 4 more times, and make sure that you are going after the right goals and measuring the right things. Engagement is certainly worth measuring, but make sure to go beyond that as well to know why you're measuring engagement, what kind of engagement is most valuable to you, and why this all matters at the end of the day. So that's just a shareable stat. Pretty darn stunning. TikTok also has the lowest volume for sports teams by quite a bit, with sports teams averaging about 2 video posts per week on TikTok. But again, that engagement rate just screams at you. Sports teams in 2022, the benchmarks were 9.18% average engagement rate. Pretty cool shareable stat. Think about it, talk about it, ponder it, and more importantly, stick around for more fun with Nick Lawson of Squad. Right back from this episode's shareable stat. I am joined once again by Nick Lawson. He is co-founder of Squad. Nick, had so much fun talking to you and learning from you in our interview segment. Are you now ready for some scratch-offs?
Yep, absolutely.
Number one, you mentioned that you played football in college, so give us the scouting report of Nick Lawson, the football player.
Yeah, not a great one. I came into is Division III, but I came in as a 198-pound offensive lineman.
Wow.
When usually it was 260. So I would hope that my coach's scouting report was small but scrappy. But probably if we're going NFL draft report, it's the cons has a ceiling, just meaning there's only so much that I can grow in height and weight throughout that. I ended my college career at 220, so that just gives you an idea of how much fat and muscle they put on you through a weight program.
Yeah, I'm remembering that one college player that went viral for like his mayonnaise shake concoction or whatever the heck he was showing on ESPN that one time. The stuff to do to gain weight as a college player.
Exactly.
Number two, this is a good one for you, Nick. Tell me the biggest lesson you've learned as an entrepreneur about running a business.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound cliche, but a lot of it is relationships. And by that, I mean, the best way to build a relationship is to have empathy. And a lot of people think empathy is tied with sympathy. Empathy is the actual definition is understanding, right? So it's, I think the biggest thing is the best way you build a relationship is actually understanding the customer, what they're struggling with, what they're going through, and seeing how you can genuinely help rather than just sell a product. So I think, the biggest thing has been you're not just selling a product because you need to hit a sales goal. It's, hey, can I actually help you with this? With our product. And then from there, it's, okay, great. If I can actually help you, I'm able to build a relationship on that.
Yeah, I remember one of the coolest things from my time working at a startup was when someone came back, when a salesperson said, hey, we're not right for you right now. This is probably the better way to go. But then they came back and said, hey, we're ready for you now. And it's like, that's the kind of trust and credibility and true like relationship building you can have there.
Exactly.
Number three for you, Nick. This is a good one too. Tell me your favorite or particularly memorable partner activation fit that you've seen or been a part of during your tenure with Squad.
Yeah, it's one of our first big teams that we worked with, but we digitized the Dunkin' race for the Chicago Bulls. So for years you would get a paper one that you couldn't choose; you just got Biggie Bagel. And to give a quick background, the Dunkin' race has been around since Jordan, and Jordan used to actually make bets. The story goes is that he would ask the game staff who was going to win, and then he would bet money with his players on the bench to say, "I bet you Biggie Bagel is going to win." Now, whether that story is true or not, it just adds to the lore of the Dunkin' race. But it's been around since the 90s. We helped digitize it, and it's just amazing how much brand the Bulls have built with that. Because, I mean, fans go crazy. There's Reddit conspiracies that Cuppy Coffee wins more than other times. It's they've built a really good activation around it, and I loved how we were able to come in and digitize it and bring even more ROI to something that already had such a nostalgia feel for Bulls fans. So that's still is one of my favorite activations that we do, just because again we were able to build upon something that has had tradition for the last 30 years type of thing.
What a perfect story. Taking something that really does have that tradition, have that lore, going from analog to digital, and increasing the value of it, a lot by doing so. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Exactly. Number 4 for you, Nick. Tell us about the podcast that you host or co-host called The Inches.
Yeah, The Inches has been fun. Rich Franklin, who worked at the Winterhawks, he's now at Coachella Valley Firebirds, the Kraken's new AHL team. When his time at the Winterhawks, I used to just walk in and pick his brain on sponsorship because Rich has just had decades of experience in both radio broadcast sponsorship sales and team sponsorship sales. So started realizing that we should start recording some of these conversations because Rich would just give me so many good insights on selling, on activating, all of that. So we've been doing it since 2018. It's been a blast. We literally just recorded before I got on this podcast, but really all it is me asking Rich questions that I have in sponsorship and recording it, which has just been really, really valuable, not only for myself, but hopefully for our listeners as well. So it definitely didn't start off as we should start a podcast. It started off as we had like 6 or 7 really good hour-long conversations, and I was like, I got to record these. Like, we have to put this onto wax, as they say, so that we can let other people know that this is how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, no, that's the coolest part of how stuff like those podcasts can come together is that, hey, we're talking, we're both benefiting from this. The rest of the sports business and greater sports community can benefit from this as well. And just really cool to see it play out. And yeah, you and Rich make a great duo. So keep it up for sure. Number 5, I want you to put your fan hat on. Tell me the most memorable game, any sport, any time that you've ever attended.
Yeah, I'm blessed. My parents went to Cal. That's why I grew up in the East Bay area. So I grew up going to Cal games. My sophomore year in 8th grade was Aaron Rodgers years. High school was Marshawn Lynch years. And then end of high school was Deshaun Jackson years. So like I lived during those like key Cal moments. But at the time, our quarterback was being recruited by Cal, so he brought me along because he had extra recruitment pass. Against Washington, Marshawn Lynch wins it in overtime. Actually, his touchdown put them in a position to win. Desmond Bishop, who ended up winning a Super Bowl with the Packers, actually picked it off, which ended the game, but he housed it. He ran 80 yards to go house an interception when he should have slid and taken it down. But that game was the Marshawn Lynch golf cart game where he was on the field. I did not see that because right after the game, we then went into the locker room because we had these recruiter passes. So I didn't see the golf cart until afterwards on ESPN, but I was able to be in the locker room when Marshawn Lynch comes in after that game and the excitement. So, it's a little bit of a little bit more than just being a fan in the stands, but no, that memory was amazing just because not only could I see the on-field excitement, but I was able to be in the Cal locker room to kind of see the excitement of beating Washington in overtime and just the way they did it.
Oh yeah, that's so freaking cool. We won't talk about the current state of Cal football, but that's you definitely were in the Bay Area for a golden era. Pun very much intended. Number 6, it's gonna be a phone for you. Tell me the sponsorship concept or idea that you kind of just had in your head that you haven't seen play out yet that you hope to see in action one day. Just one of those crazy harebrained ideas maybe you have in the shower, or have when you're sitting in bed of like this should totally happen. This should totally exist.
Yeah, we've been working on a prediction game that I haven't gotten anybody to say yes to. So if you're Brandon, you're interested, definitely say yes, or a team and interested in selling this. I'm intrigued because our prediction games. Hey, if you predict it correctly, you win a prize. That's great. But like, what if we did a thing where you predict rushing yards, and if you're smack dab correct, meaning you predict the 262 rushing yards, or you're within 10 yards or whatever it is, you don't just win a prize, you win that many dollars off your next purchase. So if you say it's going to be 117, then you basically have won $117 off your next flight. It just adds so much of a different mindset element to why I'm making the prediction. And it adds a fun storyline to it. So I've wanted to do that for a while, just to say, look, it's not just, how, predict the rushing yards and you win, which honestly is incredibly hard, but how can we make it so that we can add a little bit of a side piece to it to say, if you win $115 off your purchase, because then that leads to purchase. If I win $115 off my next, purchase, and I won it because I guess the exact amount, I'm gonna go make that purchase, right? And then obviously on the back end, if you don't win, then maybe if you're incorrect, maybe you win 25% of that number or 10% of that number or whatever. So I think that's something I've wanted to get off the ground for a couple of years. Nothing's, we've come close a few times, but nothing's fully hit. But that's when I hope, I hope this year is the year that we actually implement that, with a brand partner and a team.
I love that. I love a couple of the aspects that really stand out to me of the user lose it aspect. Hey, you have this fat discount now. You probably want to use it or else it goes away. And then also the idea of just, hey, like everyone can win. Only one person might win that signed jersey, whoever that grand prize is. But now, hey, here's a consolation discount, or something that you can still use to convert them into a customer. And all of a sudden, you could have a lot more than just that one person that is ultimately converting, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Number 7. This is another one. Picking your sports sponsorship brain. Tell me a sports sponsorship, any type of activation across the board that did not involve squad that sort of caught your eye recently, or is among your all-time favorite that sticks with you.
Yeah, I think for a couple of years they've done it well, but the Duke's Mayo Bowl is just it takes what we've seen in bowl sponsorship of just like generic. I'm just a name partner of the bowl, but they actually put it together very well to where, honestly, my wife was watching because she wanted to see the mayonnaise cook-off. They have people in the stands eating straight mayonnaise, right? Which, in my mindset is disgusting, but for some reason I want to watch it. They introduced a new mascot, which is Tubby. And they did some things around that. And then obviously the dumping the mayo on the coach, right? That's going to make Sports Center every time, right? Because even if it's an uninteresting bowl, you want to see a coach dumped mayonnaise on them, right? It's something you want to see. It's a spectacle. So I'm very impressed in how Duke's Mayo has taken a bowl game that honestly is, being a name sponsor of a bowl game has gotten kind of stale and really put their spin on to it. And again, as we talked about, it's all awareness, but that type of awareness and that type of standing out makes it so that when I walk down my, aisle, I'm looking for Duke's Mayo if I'm buying mayonnaise rather than the other brand partner because it's sticking with me.
Yeah, you have that affinity for maybe for life. Oh, and that's a great call.
Yeah.
I love seeing what they do across the board. All right, time for our food question, Nick. Come down the wire here in our scratch off segment. We always got to talk about food, and we always have a food question. So I happened to Portland many years ago. So tell me if I come back up to Portland and we hang out. Tell me the best meal to get and where to get it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit of a cheat code because I used to sell restaurant ads here in the city, but there's two. It matters. My first question would be, do you want fancy or do you want, good but regular, I guess I would say. So
whatever is going to have me tell them friends back home, like, hey, I just had the best meal ever.
Yeah, the non-fancy is Papi Chulo's best Mexican restaurant. It's kind of that street taco place, not a sit down, come in, but coming from California and living in Portland where, obviously Mexican food is very good in California. It's the most authentic that I've gotten to for, your Americanized Mexican. But I have to give a shout out. There's a wine bar in town called OK Omens, run by Brent, who's a wine connoisseur, and became a good friend of mine. But their food there is insane. Like their fried chicken, they basically take like very common dishes and make them very, very good. So it's, great ambiance. They have a great patio, great wine, Brent will come over to you and chat about wine and say, hey, try this wine, try that wine. But it's you have to make a reservation because it's that popular. It's easy to make reservations, but if you walk up, chances are there probably won't be seats. But no, if you're headed to Portland, definitely check out OK Almonds. Amazing, even if you're not into wine, amazing food, great atmosphere.
There we go. I like it. We'll get some street tacos for lunch, then we'll have a gastronomic experience for dinner. That sounds great.
Exactly.
All right, last before you hear Nick, this is an important question, a tough one. So we have NBA in Portland, we have Major League Soccer, we have National Women's League Soccer League, NWSL. We talked about obviously the Portland Winterhawks as well. So tell me which other major pro sport should be in Portland, if any?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think WNBA, and there was a WNBA team here not while I was here called the Portland Fire. It makes so much business sense. It makes so much geographic sense. Obviously the Seattle Storm are great clients of ours and our early clients, and I'm a fan of the Seattle Storm because of that. So I don't know if I would become a Portland, WNBA team fan, but it's just it's a great market for women's sports. You have Moda Center that you can play in to that degree. You have basketball fans with the Blazers. You have entire statewide reach, so you don't have to compete with different cities. But I think the third thing is, from what people tell me, between the Blazers and the Sonics, and even the Portland Fire and the Seattle Storm, the I-5 rivalry is something that, Seattle is the bigger city. Portland's kind of sometimes seen as, the little brother city. So I think just that fuel rivalry is something that can really push it. So, of all of the leagues, I think the one that would be the most successful here would actually be a WNBA team.
There we go. I will say the Portland Thorns and the NWSL are among one of the best run women's sports teams out there, and have a great fan base. And to your point too, on the rivalry, I got to go to a Portland-Seattle MLS game, so it definitely rings true. And hell yeah, make it happen, WNBA. There's a spot up there in Portland for you. All right, Nick, you kicked ass in your scratch-offs. Now your chance to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Yeah, this is going to be not an individual one, but an overall one. But I love what the Zoomph team and Amir, ZOOMPH team, just does on social. The analytics, the insights they put out constantly. Like, if I was at a team, just looking at some of those, free reports that they put out will help you sell more, partnership dollars. So definitely follow Amir over at Zoomph. But a lot of their other team members and even their account put out a ton of sponsorship, audience metrics that can really help on that side. So I'd give a shout out to them and say, hey, if most bang for your buck following somebody or an organization, that's going to be the one.
That's a great call out. Amir is one of the goats in the sports business space, and seems like he knows everybody. And to your point, yeah, Zoom just puts out great free stuff, great reports, great information, and great platform they have too. And how about you, Nick? Where can we find you as well as all things Squad across digital social media?
Yeah, definitely. Check out our website if you're interested in some digital activations to help you drive revenue on the sponsorship side. It's sqwadhq.com. If you want to follow me, LinkedIn's probably the best place. It's where most of the content goes for me. So just Nick Lawson, CEO at Squad. And then also we do have the Inches podcast that we do weekly. So available on all platforms. Just type in the Inches and it should pop up. So those are usually the three best places to kind of get to know the company, get to know me, and see some of our insights.
Oh yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and let us learn from you. The Squad platform is fantastic, and it's clear that it's got some good leadership behind it with you and your partner. And just thanks so much again for helping us today and teaching us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
So much fun being able to chat with Nick Lawson, co-founder and CEO of Squad. I've known Nick for years, and it's been really cool to see the continued success of Squad, and of course, just being able to learn from him and talk about some important, interesting ideas today on the podcast. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for downloading and listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Also, hit me up on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net. And, of course, check out the podcast on whichever podcast platform is your preferred platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.